Some cars are great because of the way they drive. Some cars are fabulous just because of the way they look. And some cars are fascinating because of their stories, usually connected to particular people. This car, the Heigo 911, has all three.
It's a car built with youthful enthusiasm that inspired a world champion's drive, was lost for decades, and has now been given a whole new lease of life. This is the story of the Heigo 911.
Such nice balance, so typically 911. You've got to work with a feel for the front end, that light front end, which means you're always busy. Unassisted steering in this, you know exactly where you are. It feels odd to start with, but once you've got that front just slipping a little bit, work with the throttle, so good. This is a very wet Wales, very Network Q, RAC, Wales Rally GB conditions. Albeit we're on tarmac, obviously. I wonder if this car feels at home, recognises any of these roads.
Because this is where the Heigo 911 did many of its rallies over the years, but its story starts long before it ever reached these shores. The reason this car is what it is resides with this man, who's travelled to the UK today to tell the tale of what will really always be his car.
Are the hairs okay? Yes, my name is Dieter Röscheisen. I'm from Germany. I worked more than 40 years for the Porsche company in Weissach. In the beginning, I start with the electronic system, ABS and so on, and also the four-wheel drive. And my high project was the 959. We have all together a four-wheel drive, ABS the first time, and the fastest car. I started with motorsport when I was 17 years old. At first as a co-driver in a Ford Capri. And when I got the license 1 year later, I continue riding with Ford Escort RS and Fiat, and after them BMW 202 Tii. And 1979, I was the first time in Rally Monte Carlo, and I saw a lot of Porsche 911, and then I have the idea to build an own one.
The 24-year-old Dieter managed to buy a year-old 911 3-litre SC directly from the factory. Then, in a little private garage in Hochdorf, during the summer of 1979, he and a group of his friends from Porsche set about transforming the car. Budget was minimal, and his friends helped out for the fun of it. But a bit of money did come from a company close to the home of Dieter's co-driver. Heigo Autotechnik is a German manufacturer of roll cages. And if you go to their website, you'll see that 45 years later, they are still getting their money's worth out of that sponsorship deal with Dieter.
This was the first presentation in January in Stuttgart.
It's a caravan show, is that right?
Caravan show, yes. There is only one hall for motorsport.
Dieter went on to have a very successful season with the Heigo 911 in 1980, and as you can see from the period photos and footage, he drove with real gusto. Out of 11 rallies, he won 3 of them and stood on the podium another 3 times. But fun and successful though it was also expensive, and it was to be a single season love affair.
It was the end of the season 1980. And Walter was 1980 first time rally champion, world rally champion. And there was a big party in Bavaria, very close to his home. And there was Christopher Watten there. And he asked Walter about Rally 911, and he came to me to the table and said, "This guy has a 911.
Christopher Wathen duly bought the car and transported it back to the UK. Not that he had quite as much success as Dieter when he rallied it.
I heard that Christopher Wathen has big problems to have the car under control. Before he bought this 911, he has an Escort BDA with the steering wheel on his right side and the engine on the front. And now he has the steering wheel on the left side and the engine on the back. And he has no problem to control the car, and he has a lot of accidents.
The trouble was, shortly afterwards, Walter Röhrl could have done with the car himself. The newly crowned world champion had a contract with Mercedes for 1981, but they pulled out before the start of the season, and Röhrl was left without a drive.
And Walter called me and said, "Oh, it's so bad that we sold the Heigo Porsche. If we have this car, so we can do some rallies together, but then I have the idea to build another one, 911, the Duduco Porsche, and we make 2 rallies, one in Italy and one of Isle of Man."
Walter, how are you enjoying your first rally on the Isle of Man?
That's nice, but my speed was too fast on the first 3 stages. I nearly went off 5 times.
Up front, it's world champion Röhrl, the Porsche 911 maintaining its lead, but even now it's only a matter of seconds which count. And this is just the 4th of 36 special stages.
Röhrl spent most of his 1981 WRC sabbatical rallying a 924 Carrera GTS, but he did have 3 outings in a 911. On the Isle of Man, he was leading on the first day, hustling the big 911 through the narrow lanes of the Isle of Man. But then, as night fell, well, Jimmy McRae and Tony Pond overtook him. During daylight, he was hampered by the loss of 3rd gear, but he was still on for a podium until, well, he lost the drive shaft in sight of the finish line and also right in front of the camera.
And Röhrl is next with the Porsche, but heartbreak is just around the corner for the early leader. The car clips the gravel on the outside of the corner and breaks a drive shaft. Power is lost, and the German champion can only sit helplessly as the car coasts downhill to stop 500 yards from the end of the final stage. A desperate end to a fine effort.
But the pace of Dieter's second 911 had clearly sparked something, because the Porsche factory then built a 3rd SC for Röhrl's only WRC appearance that year, in San Remo. Wearing the number 1 of world champion, he was leading after the first 8 stages on tarmac, and despite falling behind Michèle Mouton and her Audi Quattro on the subsequent gravel stages, he was making a dramatic comeback on the final sealed surface day, and was 2nd overall when a drive shaft was once more his undoing. Nonetheless, these strong showings were perhaps, just perhaps, the genesis for the later Group B SCRS 911s that Henry Toivonen would rally in Rothman's colours. In some ways, you could see the Heigo car as the 2915 Speedmaster to the eventual Moonwatch.
Yes, it was the beginning, and then we built the Rothman's cars and with Henry Toivonen and so on.
And what, you might be wondering, happened to the Heigo car? Well, it sort of went into hiding, really, for about 30 years, ironically underneath a Rothman's livery. It continued rallying, actually here, mostly, in Wales. Christopher Wathen kept the car for 2 decades before selling it to Steve Davis, who continued to rally it throughout Europe with no idea of the car's past. It was only when he decided to do a bit of restoration that he discovered the remnants of another livery underneath the blue, gold and red Rothman stripes. After a bit of sleuthing, he got in touch with Walter Röhrl, who put him in touch with Dieter, who checked his records and confirmed that it was indeed the Heigo 911 that he'd last seen almost 30 years ago. The car's beautiful original colour scheme was restored, but the mechanicals weren't quite correct.
I was happy to see the car after so long time, but I was not so happy with the restoration. It was not more my car.
Nonetheless, others that saw the Heigo 911 at this point were inspired and 3 replicas were built. But it has taken many years, the work and dedication of Tuthill, Dieter and the current owner to get the original car into its current condition. A state worthy of its history. There are a few little modern mechanical touches here and there, but the ambience and ethos is all absolutely as it should be. Even the seats are period correct now, thanks to Dieter. And now it's finished, I think it's safe to say that Dieter is happy with the result.
It's really, really perfect. It's really, really perfect.
Colour, lights.
Everything, the lights.
The seats as well.
The seats, yes. But maybe I can take the car with me to Germany. Not so easy for an old man.
Is it as you remember?
Yes, I feel it's 1980. Really, really perfect.
The fact this is not on massive wide rear tyres, because kind of everything stems from there in a way. You build it up from narrow rear tyres and you don't need huge amounts of power. I mean, 300 brake horsepower is absolutely plenty. It just means you've got all that kind of playfulness in there. A lovely 911 balance.
I love that it has been tweaked very slightly from a full-blown competition car into something that can and will be taken out for a nostalgic blast on the road by its new owner.
Some might see it as sacrilege, but actually, to be honest, I think it's rather a nice way of preserving the history, keeping it alive. Much better than wrapping it in cotton wool and stuffing it in a museum somewhere. Let's face it, nothing of the original car really still exists other than the body shells, so yeah. Why not make it drivable? It's obviously a couple of shades more raw than even something like a GT3 RS, but it's just great. The engine in this was actually done by Jeff Gamroth over in the US, whose engines I've driven before in things like Gunther Works, and it has that wonderful gruff sound to it and that typical feel of a 911. In terms of really big engine, because it's 3 litres, so that's quite a big engine in essentially not much of a car. And it gives it that really sort of grown-up feeling compared to something like, well, I suppose a Mark II Escort or something like that. It's quick too. This has got about 300 brake horsepower, so actually slightly up on what it would have had back in the day when they'd have had about 270 probably. And like any good competition car, this is a car that gets better the more positive you are with it. The more you grab it by the scruff of the neck and drive it, the happier it feels.
The harder you push it, the more the modern spec dampers fitted by Tuthill work with the constant lumps and bumps of a road like this, not robbing you of any sense of connection, just smothering the worst to help maintain speed. The brakes too have been upgraded to carbon ceramics, but so much of the rest is absolutely period correct.
The steering, in any sort of resto mod, to use that word, I've tried to avoid it, but you can't really. Any resto mod, you change this steering wheel, But obviously you won't in this, because it's part of this car's story. It's what was in there back in the day. So yeah, it's ugly, but it's part of this car. The 915 gearbox has a really distinct feel to it. It's a sort of slow, quick, slow, because it's really tactile in the first bit of the shift and the end of the shift. So as you come out of gear and then back into gear, that's the lovely bit. In the middle, it's sort of really loose and free, and there's no tactility or weight to it at all. So it's slow, quick, slow. These pedals are fabulous as well. It's so distinctive. The way that each one has its individual arc when you press it. There's real weight to them as well. You really need to push that brake pedal. Throttle pedal as well, there's real resistance there. It's that lovely sensation of a car that's small and light, but also meaty through all the control weightings. This car obviously has a very distinctive view out, because you're used to having the two front arches there, but this has got those row of lights on the bonnet as well. I'm a sucker for some spotlights. Why have two when you can have six? I mean, you know, I should really go and live in Norway or Sweden sort of all through winter, just so I can have as many lights as possible on my car. I love the fact that although this is obviously freshly restored, it's still a little bit kind of rough and ready somehow. The fact you've got these labels down here, and it is raw in here. You know, it's noisier than you'd expect for, you know, I suppose a resto mod or a road car, but that's part of the character. You know you're in still a rally car essentially. This is a bit of a fantasy car for me really, because many moons ago I thought about building a 911 SC rally car back when, well, the base cars were still cheap. Never quite got around to it, unlike Dieter.
I know we're in the weeds, off a cul-de-sac, down a side road of Porsche history here. The Heigo 911 would be listed deep in the further reading appendix of a textbook. It's not a tale told on Wikipedia. Yet, I find lesser known first-person accounts like Dieter's fascinating, because they often feel more relatable and bring the past to life more vividly as a result.